Beneath the silver canopy of Eldara's ancient forests, Lyra Voss stood motionless, her pointed ears twitching at the hum of distant warships. The air was thick with the scent of moon blossoms and damp moss, but the usual peace of the grove had vanished. Something was wrong. Very wrong. For 3,000 years, the pact between the starborn elven clans and the Galactic Council had held. Fragile, cold, but unbroken. Now, with the Council accusing humanity of violating sacred space near the Veil Nebula, that truce shattered like glass. Lyra was not a warrior by choice. She was a keeper of songs, a reader of star maps, the last living scion of the Dusk Wardens, an order once tasked with guarding the balance between magic and machine. Her silver hair fell past her shoulders, threaded with faint strands of starlight that pulsed when danger neared, and now they glowed like warning beacons. Beside her, Ember, her obsidian-scaled dragon companion, growled low, his wings folding tight against the chill of betrayal. He was small for a dragon, no larger than a ground transport, but his eyes burned with ancient intelligence. He had hatched from a stone egg found in the ruins of a dead star, and from the moment he opened his eyes he had chosen Lyra. They moved as one, thought as one, feared as one. The Council's message had arrived an hour ago, broadcast across every channel, every comm node, every public mind link. Humanity, they claimed, had crossed the Veil Nebula boundary, deployed forbidden weapons and slaughtered elven outposts. The evidence was damning: grainy footage, distorted voice logs, energy signatures that matched human warships. But Lyra knew better. She had studied human culture for decades. They were loud, messy, sometimes reckless, but never cruel without reason. And they respected boundaries more than most species. She knelt, pressing her palm to the mossy earth. The roots beneath whispered to her in a language only Dusk Wardens understood. Images flooded her mind. Ships cloaked in elven sigils firing upon their own kind, then painting human insignias over the wreckage. The truth was being buried beneath lies, and the Council, desperate to maintain control, had chosen humanity as their scapegoat. Ember nudged her shoulder, his warm breath curling around her like smoke. She stood, brushing dirt from her tunic. We have to move, she thought, and Ember understood. They could not stay. The Council would come for her next. As the last Dusk Warden, she knew too much. About the old wars, about the binding rituals, about the weapon hidden beneath Eldara's core that could unravel stars. They slipped through the forest like shadows. The trees bent slightly to let them pass, their leaves humming in farewell. Lyra did not look back. She had no home to return to. The great spire of the Duskwarden Temple, once a beacon of knowledge, had been sealed centuries ago after the last elder vanished. Now only rumors remained. Rumors of a dragon sleeping beneath the planet's crust, bound by song and silence. As they reached the edge of the forest, the sky split open. 3 Council warships descended, their hulls shimmering with iridescent plating. They hovered like predators, scanning the land below. Lyra ducked behind a stone ridge, her heart pounding. Ember flattened himself against the ground, his scales shifting to match the gray rock. A voice echoed from above, amplified and cold. Lyra Voss, you are summoned before the High Conclave. Surrender peacefully or be declared a traitor to the Elven Way. She did not answer. Instead, she reached into the pouch at her belt and pulled out a small, smooth stone, her last wayfinder. It had been carved from the heart of a fallen meteor, inscribed with coordinates only she could read. The stone warmed in her hand, pointing not toward the capital but toward the dead moon of Kalis, where the first truce had been signed 3 millennia ago. That was where the truth lay buried. Ember tensed. He knew what she was planning. It was dangerous. The dead moon was forbidden, its surface laced with unstable gravity wells and ghost echoes of ancient battles. But it was also the only place the Council would not expect them to go. With a silent nod, Lyra climbed onto Ember's back. His wings unfurled with a soft crackle of energy, and in one powerful leap they shot into the sky. Alarms blared from the warships. Beams of light lanced through the air, but Ember twisted midair, dodging with impossible grace. He banked hard to the east, toward the jagged peaks of the Ashfang Range, where storms masked all sensor readings. Below, the forest erupted in light as the Council ships unleashed their wrath. Trees turned to ash, rivers boiled, and the sacred grove, the last untouched place on Eldara, was scorched in seconds. Lyra closed her eyes but did not weep. Grief would come later. Now she had to survive. They flew through the storm, rain stinging their skin, lightning flashing around them like angry spirits. Ember's scales absorbed the worst of the energy, protecting them both. After hours of flight, the storm cleared, and the blackness of space opened before them. Ember did not slow. He angled upward, breaking through the atmosphere with a final burst of flame. In orbit, a small human freighter hung in the dark, its lights dim, its hull patched with mismatched plating. It was the Stardust Maeve, registered to a civilian trader named Claire Bennett, a woman Lyra had met once during a cultural exchange on neutral station Omega-9. Claire had given her a data chip that day, saying, "Just in case things go sideways." Lyra had not understood then. She did now. Ember matched velocity with the freighter and a docking hatch slid open. Inside, Claire waited, arms crossed, her brown eyes sharp with worry. "You're late," she said. But her voice held no anger, just relief. Lyra stepped off Ember's back, her legs trembling from exhaustion. "They're blaming humanity," she said simply. Claire nodded. "We know. Our comms lit up an hour ago. The Council's already mobilizing fleets. They're calling for a full blockade of human space." "Then they're fools," Lyra said. "This isn't about humanity. It's about control. The Council's losing influence. They needed a war to unite the clans. And you think the truth is on that dead moon?" "I know it is." Claire studied her for a long moment, then glanced at Ember, who curled up near the cargo bay like a cat. "All right. But we're not going alone. I've got a friend in the Outer Rim, Nora Ellis. Used to be a xenolinguist. Now she runs fleet ops for the 3rd Sector Defense. If anyone can help us expose this, it's her." Lyra hesitated. Trusting humans was still new to her people. But Claire had risked her ship, her life, just to wait in orbit. That meant something. "All right," Lyra said, "but we leave now, before they track us." Claire tapped her wrist comm, engaging silent drive. "Destination, Vale Nebula Relay Point Delta. From there, we jump to Kalis." As the freighter slipped into the void, Lyra looked out the viewport at the fading blue curve of Eldara. Her world was burning, but she would not let the lies win. The truce was broken, yes, but maybe, just maybe, something better could rise from the ashes. Ember rested his head on her lap, his breath slow and steady. She ran her fingers along his snout, feeling the warmth beneath his scales. They were outlaws now. Hunted. But they were also free. And somewhere in the dark, humanity was preparing not for war, but for truth. That thought, more than any weapon, gave her hope. The stars watched in silence as the Stardust Maeve vanished into the fold of space, carrying the last Dusk Warden and her dragon toward a secret that could save the galaxy, or doom it forever. On the orbital shipyard Helios ring, Captain Nora Ellis reviewed encrypted fleet logs with narrowed eyes. The station hummed around her, a symphony of metal groans, thruster burns, and distant chatter from dock crews. Outside the reinforced viewport, human ships drifted in neat formation. Freighters, corvettes, even a few aging destroyers undergoing refit. Nothing fancy, nothing threatening. Certainly nothing that matched the Council's claims of a massive human armada breaching sacred space. Nora had once taught xenolinguistics at the Mars Academy. She could read 17 alien dialects, decode ancient scripts, and spot a forged document from a light year away. That skill had landed her a desk job in fleet intelligence after the Vega incident. Now it made her dangerous. The Council's evidence was too clean, too perfect. Human ships supposedly firing on elven outposts near the Vale Nebula, but the energy signatures were off. The weapon harmonics did not match any known human plasma array, and the voice logs, though distorted, carried subtle linguistic markers that pointed not to human pilots, but to elven war mages trained in mimicry. She pulled up a side-by-side analysis on her screen. One file showed raw sensor data from a neutral mining outpost near the nebula. The other was the Council's edited broadcast. The differences were small but deliberate. A shift in frequency here, a missing timestamp there. Someone had doctored the truth. Nora leaned back, rubbing her temples. She had seen this before, not with elves but with the Krell Syndicate years ago. When a government wants war, it manufactures a reason. The question was, why now? A soft chime announced an incoming secure message. She tapped the console. The screen flickered, then displayed a grainy image of Claire Bennett, her face half lit by cockpit lights. Behind her, a silver-haired elf woman stood with arms crossed, her eyes sharp as glass. Beside them, coiled in the cargo bay like a living shadow, was a dragon. Nora did not blink. She had read the old files. Dragons were myth, extinct for millennia, yet here one was, breathing, watching real. Claire spoke first. Nora, this is Lyra Voss, last of the Dusk Wardens. She says the Council's lying. And she's got proof. Lyra stepped forward. The attacks near the Veil Nebula were staged. Council mages used stolen human tech to frame your people. They needed a war to distract from their own failures. The outer colonies are starving. The clans are fracturing. They needed a common enemy. And they picked us, Nora said flatly. You were convenient, Lyra replied, loud, visible, and powerful enough to scare the others into obedience. Nora studied her. Why come to me? Because you see patterns, Lyra said, and because humanity does not strike first. You wait, you watch, you protect. That is rare in this galaxy. Nora exhaled slowly. All right, what do you need? Access to deep-range drones? Lyra said, ones that can slip past Council patrols and reach the Veil Nebula's core. The real weapon isn't ships or bombs. It's something older. Something buried. Nora raised an eyebrow. Buried where beneath Eldara, Lyra said. But the trail starts in the nebula. The Council planted false beacons there, nodes that mimic human signals. But they also left something else. A resonance echo. Only a Dusk Warden can hear it. Nora didn't ask how. She had learned long ago not to question magic she couldn't measure. Instead, she opened a new channel. Authorization Ellis Nova 7. Release 2 Phantom-class drones from Bay 9. Load them with passive sensors and quantum recorders. No weapons. No transponders. A voice crackled back. Acknowledged. Drones prepped in 10. Good, Nora said. Then she turned back to the screen. You'll ride with the drones. Claire's freighter isn't built for stealth near the nebula. I've got a scout corvette, Midnight Wren, that can get you in and out unseen. Lyra nodded. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Nora said. If you're wrong, we've just committed an act of espionage against a sovereign power. If you're right, well then the galaxy's about to change. 3 hours later, Lyra stood in the dim hold of the Midnight Wren, her boots magnetized to the deck. Ember lay coiled near the rear hatch, his scales absorbing the faint red emergency lights. The ship was small, just enough room for a pilot, a co-pilot, and cargo. But it was fast, quiet, and wrapped in a cloaking field that bent light and sensor waves alike. Nora had come aboard personally. She wore a standard Navy jumpsuit, no rank pins, no insignia, just a woman doing a job. She handed Lyra a thin wristband. Neural link. It'll sync you with the drone feeds. You'll see what they see, hear what they hear. Lyra slipped it on. It hummed softly against her skin. Ember lifted his head, sniffing the air. He did not like machines, but he trusted Nora. Somehow he knew she was different. The Midnight Wren detached from Helios Ring without fanfare. Its engines flared once, then faded to near silence as it entered stealth mode. Stars stretched into lines as the ship jumped to high velocity, heading toward the Veil Nebula, a swirling cloud of ionized gas and ancient stardust, beautiful and deadly. As they approached the nebula's edge, Nora activated the drones. 2 sleek, needle-like probes shot forward, vanishing into the colorful haze. Lyra closed her eyes, letting the neural link pull her into their senses. Suddenly, she was flying through violet clouds past jagged asteroids over silent ruins of long-dead stations. Then she heard it, a low, rhythmic pulse beneath the static. Not mechanical. Organic. Alive. There, she whispered. Bearing 215 depth gamma, Nora adjusted course. The Wren followed the drones deeper into the nebula, weaving through magnetic storms and gravity eddies. The pulse grew stronger. It matched the old songs, the ones her ancestors used to calm newborn stars. Suddenly, one drone's feed flickered. A shape emerged from the mist, a massive structure half buried in rock and ice. It was not human. Not elven. It was older than both. Its surface pulsed with the same rhythm as the signal. What is that? Nora asked. A beacon, Lyra said, but not for navigation, for awakening. Awakening what? Before she could answer, alarms blared. The second drone had been detected. Council patrol ships, 3 of them, dropped out of warp nearby, their scanners sweeping the area. They knew we'd come, Nora muttered. She slammed the throttle forward. Ember braced himself, claws digging into the deck plating. The Wren twisted hard to port, diving behind a gas giant's moon. The drones self-destructed in silent bursts, erasing all data, but not before Lyra had seen enough. The beacon was linked to Eldara, and it was counting down. How long? Nora asked. 3 days? Lyra said. Maybe less. Once it reaches 0, it will send a signal deep into the planet's core. To the Elder Dragon. Nora went still. Dragon. You're serious? He's real, Lyra said, and if he wakes in rage, he won't distinguish between council, human, or elven. He'll burn everything. Nora's hands flew over the controls. We need to warn the fleet. But more than that, we need to stop that beacon. We can't destroy it, Lyra said. It's woven into the nebula's heart. Breaking it could collapse the entire region. Then we disable it, Nora said gently. Lyra looked at her. You trust me to do that. I trust that you haven't lied yet, Nora said. And that's more than I can say for the Council. They plotted a new course, not back to human space, but deeper into the nebula, to a hidden maintenance shaft the drones had spotted near the beacon's base. It was risky. The Council would be watching. But it was the only way. As the wren slipped through a narrow canyon of frozen gas, Ember let out a low rumble. Lyra placed a hand on his neck. I know, she said. But we have to try. Nora glanced back at them, her expression unreadable. You know, she said quietly, most species would have run. Hidden. Waited for the storm to pass. We are not most species, Lyra replied. No, Nora said with the faintest hint of a smile. You're not. The ship vanished into the storm, a tiny speck of hope in a sea of lies. Ahead the beacon pulsed like a dying star, and somewhere far away, beneath the crust of a dying world, something ancient stirred in its sleep. The Council's armada gathered at the edge of human space, their crystalline warships gleaming like knives drawn from a sheath. They expected surrender, silence, fear. Instead, they found nothing. No transmissions, no battle lines, no frantic evacuations, just empty space and the quiet hum of distant stars. Then, without warning, the darkness struck back. Human stealth corvettes, cloaked in quantum shadows, emerged from blind angles, behind asteroids, within sensor ghosts. Even inside the wake of the Council's own supply tenders, they did not fire. Not at first. They disabled comms arrays, severed navigation relays, and jammed targeting systems with surgical precision. Within minutes, the Grand Armada was blind, deaf, and drifting aboard the command vessel Azure Crown. High Magister Vorlan slammed his fist on the obsidian table. How? How are they inside our formation? A junior officer stammered. They used our own gravimetric trails, sir. Folded space along our warp echoes. Impossible, Vorlan hissed. Only elven mages can manipulate fold space. Not anymore. Came a calm voice from the main view screen. Captain Nora Ellis appeared, her face framed by the bridge of the Dawnwarden, a newly commissioned human frigate. Behind her, tactical displays showed the captured Council ships, their crews unharmed but contained. We studied your tech after the first contact summit. You left your manuals in the public archive. We read them. You dare mock us, Vorlan snarled. I dare show the galaxy your lies, Nora said. She tapped a command. Every captured ship began broadcasting raw, unedited footage. Council operatives planting human insignias on wreckage, mages altering sensor logs, warships disguised as civilian transports firing on their own outposts. The data flooded neutral networks, diplomatic channels, even the public mind links of a dozen species. Outrage rippled across the Galactic Council's allied systems. Trade halted, embassies closed. The unity the Council had spent centuries building cracked under the weight of its own deceit. But Lyra Voss knew the real danger was not political, it was planetary. She stood now on the bridge of the Dawnwarden, having transferred from the Midnight Wren after their successful sabotage of the Veil Nebula beacon. The countdown had been stopped barely. Lyra had sung the old deactivation hymn into the beacon's core, while Nora rerouted its power through a human-made harmonic dampener. The fusion of elven magic and human engineering had worked, but the signal had already been sent. Faint, incomplete, but enough. The Elder Dragon beneath Eldara's crust was waking. Ember lay coiled near the rear console, his eyes half closed but alert. He could feel it too, the distant thrum of a heart older than cities stirring in molten rock. Lyra placed a hand on the viewport as if she could reach through space and touch the dying world. They have to evacuate Eldara, she said. Nora nodded. We've sent emergency alerts to every neutral and allied system, even the Council worlds. Some are listening, others are still in denial. Then we go ourselves, Lyra said. Nora studied her. That's suicide. The planet's tectonic shields are failing. Radiation levels are off the charts. Ember lifted his head and let out a low, resonant hum. It was not fear. It was resolve. He is my kin, Lyra said softly, the last of his line before the binding. If anyone can reach him, it is us. Nora was silent for a long moment. Then she turned to her comms officer. Patch me through to Fleet Command. Authorize Operation Emberfall. All civilian transports to redirect to Eldara orbit. Priority Alpha clearance. Yes, Mom, the officer replied. You're really doing this, Lyra said. Humanity does not leave anyone behind, Nora replied. Not even our enemies. Within hours, a strange armada formed. Not of warships, but of freighters, medical shuttles, rescue pods, and colony transports. Human vessels, yes, but also Krell traders, Zenthar miners. Even a few rogue elven skiffs flown by dissenters who refused to abandon their homes. They gathered at the edge of Eldara's system, waiting for the signal. Lyra and Ember boarded a modified dropship. Small, shielded, built to withstand extreme heat and pressure. Nora insisted on coming too, though Lyra argued against it. You do not know the songs, Lyra said, but I know how to keep you alive long enough to sing them, Nora replied. The dropship pierced Eldara's atmosphere like a falling star. Below, the land was breaking apart. Mountains cracked open, spewing fire. Rivers boiled into steam. The sky burned orange with ash. Yet amid the chaos, pockets of life remained. Villages huddled in valleys. Monasteries clinging to cliff faces. Children hiding in root cellars beneath ancient trees. The human fleet began its work. Shuttles descended in waves, scooping up survivors, beaming others directly to orbit. They did not ask for allegiance. They did not demand gratitude. They simply saved. On the surface, Lyra's dropship landed near the ruins of the Duskwarden Spire. The ground trembled beneath them. Ember stepped out first, his claws sinking into the cracked stone. He raised his head and roared, not in anger but in recognition. A call to kin. Deep below, something answered. A sound like continents grinding, like stars collapsing. The earth split open nearby, revealing a cavern glowing with molten light. From it rose a shape vast beyond measure. Scales black as void, eyes burning with forgotten rage, wings that could blot out moons. The elder dragon, he saw them, and for a moment he hesitated. Now, Lyra whispered. She stepped forward, her voice rising in the first notes of the binding hymn, the song of remembrance, not command. It spoke of stars born and worlds healed, of dragons who once flew beside elves as partners, not weapons. Ember joined her, his voice weaving through hers in harmony. The elder dragon roared again, but this time it was pained, confused. The council mages had poisoned his dreams for centuries, feeding him visions of betrayal, of fire and ruin, but the truth carried in Lyra's song cut through the lies like sunlight through storm clouds. Above, human ships shielded the evacuation, drawing fire from the few remaining loyalist elven fighters. Nora coordinated from orbit, her voice calm even as alarms blared. Divert power to forward shields. Reroute med bay to Deck 4. Keep those transports moving. A council warship broke through the defensive line, targeting a shuttle full of children. Before it could fire, a human destroyer rammed it sideways, sacrificing itself to buy time. The shuttle escaped. On the surface, the elder dragon lowered his massive head. His breath washed over Lyra like a furnace, but he did not burn her. He listened, and in his ancient eyes something softened. The song ended. Silence fell, broken only by the groans of the dying planet. He will return to slumber, Lyra said, tears streaking through the ash on her face, but he must not be alone. Ember stepped forward and touched his snout to the elders. A spark passed between them. Knowledge, memory, hope. Nora's voice crackled over the comm. Lyra, we've got 90% of the population off-world, but the core's destabilizing. You have 5 minutes. Lyra looked up at the dragon. Go, she said. Sleep. We will guard your dream. With a final, earth-shaking sigh, the elder dragon sank back into the molten depths. The ground sealed behind him, not with violence but with peace. Lyra, Ember, and Nora ran for the dropship as the last of Eldara's crust collapsed. They launched just as the planet's magnetic field failed, the sky turning white with energy. In orbit, the fleet regrouped, battered but whole. Survivors crowded the viewports, watching their world fade into a red ember. Nora placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. What now? Now, Lyra said, we tell the truth, not just about the council, but about what humanity did today. Nora smiled faintly. They'll call us fools. Maybe, Lyra said. Or maybe they'll finally see what we've always known, that you only smile when the galaxy needs hope most. Exactly. And as the fleet turned toward the stars, carrying refugees of every species, the legend began, not of war but of rescue, of a dragon, a song, and a human captain who chose mercy over victory. In the weeks after Eldara's fall, the galaxy held its breath. The Council's authority crumbled like dry stone. Member worlds declared independence. Trade routes realigned. Embassies that once stood tall in the capital city of Luthor now stood empty, their banners torn down by citizens who no longer believed in unity built on lies. Yet amid the chaos, something unexpected grew. Not fear, but curiosity. And hope. Humanity did not celebrate. They did not parade their victory through neutral space or broadcast triumphant speeches. Instead, they opened their arms. Refugee fleets from a dozen species, elves, Krell, Zenthar, even former Council loyalists, were welcomed into human sectors. Food, medicine, shelter, all provided without demand for repayment. Orbital habitats expanded overnight. Abandoned mining stations became temporary cities. And through it all, human engineers, doctors, and teachers worked side by side with those they had once called strangers. On the newly commissioned vessel Dawnwarden, Lyra Voss stood in the observation deck, watching a transport ferry the last of Eldara's survivors to a terraformed moon in the Perseus Arm. Ember lay curled at her feet, his scales still faintly glowing from the residual energy of the Elder Dragon's farewell. He had not spoken since their return, but his presence was enough. Nora Ellis entered quietly, holding 2 mugs of steaming root tea, human, but brewed with elven herbs Claire had traded for. She handed one to Lyra. The Council's High Magister is in custody, she said. The rest of the conclave has disbanded. Some are calling for trials. Others just want to disappear. And the clans, Lyra asked. Fractured but healing. The truth about the Elder Dragon changed everything. Many now believe the binding was never a prison, but a pact. A promise to protect the galaxy while sleeping. Nora leaned against the viewport. They're asking you to speak at the Unity Summit next cycle. On Neutral Station Omega 9, Lyra shook her head. I am no diplomat. You're the last Duskwarden, Nora said, and the only one who heard the dragon's truth. That makes you more than a diplomat. It makes you a witness. Ember lifted his head and nudged Lyra's hand. She looked down at him, then out at the stars. All right, she said, but only if you stand with me. Nora smiled. Wouldn't miss it. Meanwhile, across human space, a different kind of work began. Scientists from Mars Xenotech and the Lunar Archives collaborated with elven mystics to study the single scale the Elder Dragon had left behind. A gift, Lyra called it. The scale shimmered with starlight, responding to both emotion and energy. When held by a child, it glowed warm. When near a lie, it turned cold and dull. It was not a weapon. It was a mirror. Back on the Dawnwarden, Claire Bennett arrived with fresh supplies and news from the Outer Rim. The Krell Syndicate's offering to rebuild Eldara's orbital relays, free of charge. Seems they're trying to make up for past disagreements. Nora raised an eyebrow. The Krell don't do charity. They do when their homeworld was next on the Council's list for re-education, Claire said dryly. Turns out humanity wasn't the only one being framed. Lyra listened quietly. The Council's fear ran deep. They saw change as weakness, difference as threat. But we are stronger together. Exactly, Nora said. And now the galaxy's starting to see it too. As the Dawnwarden approached Omega 9, preparations for the summit were already underway. Delegates from over 50 systems gathered in the central chamber, their faces wary but open. When Lyra entered, silence fell, not out of fear but respect. Ember walked beside her, his presence commanding yet calm. Nora followed a few steps behind, in uniform but without insignia. Just a human among equals. Lyra did not give a speech. She sang. The old hymn of binding filled the chamber, not loud but clear. It carried no blame, no accusation, only memory. Images formed in the air around her, projected not by tech but by the resonance of her voice and the dragon scale she held. They saw Eldara before the lies. They saw the Elder Dragon sleeping peacefully beneath the mountains. They saw human ships saving elven children while their own worlds burned. When the song ended, no one spoke for a long time. Then, one by one, the delegates rose, not to applaud but to bow. Afterward, in a quiet corridor, a young elven girl approached Lyra. She could not have been more than 10 cycles old, her eyes wide with awe. "Is it true," she asked softly, "that the dragon chose you?" "He chose all of us," Lyra replied, kneeling to her level. "He chose to believe we could be better." The girl reached out and touched Ember's snout. He rumbled gently, and the girl smiled. Nora watched from a distance, her arms crossed. Claire joined her. "You look like you've seen a ghost. Just remembering how close we came to war," Nora said, "and how easily it could have happened." "But it didn't," Claire said, "because someone chose to listen instead of fight. Because humanity smiled when the galaxy expected a snarl," Nora said. Back aboard the Dawn Warden, plans were already forming. A new alliance was taking shape. Not a council, not an empire, but a network of mutual aid. Human engineers would help rebuild elven cities. Elven mystics would teach human scholars the old songs of star harmony. Dragons once thought extinct would no longer be myth, but memory made real. Lyra stood once more at the viewport, Ember beside her. The stars outside seemed brighter now, as if they too had witnessed the change. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," Nora said, "we keep our promise, to protect, to listen, to hope. And if another war comes, then we face it together," Nora said. "Not as humans or elves or dragons, but as neighbors," Lyra nodded. "That is enough." Ember stretched his wings, casting a long shadow across the deck. Outside, a fleet of mixed vessels, human, elven, Krell, Xanthar, formed up in silent formation. Not for battle, for journey. The galaxy was healing, and for the first time in 3,000 years it was not alone. Months passed, and the stars grew quieter, not from emptiness but from peace. The war that never truly began had ended not with fire, but with understanding. Across the spiral arm, new stations rose, not armed citadels, but shared outposts where human engineers taught elven children how to read star charts, and elven weavers showed human medics how to stitch wounds with light thread spun from moonvine. The elder dragon slept once more, deep beneath the cooled crust of a reborn Eldara, his dreams no longer poisoned by lies. On the bridge of the Dawn Warden, Lyra Voss stood beside Captain Nora Ellis, watching a fleet of mixed vessels depart for the Outer Veil. They carried supplies, teachers, and the first joint charter of the new alliance, signed not on paper, but etched into a living crystal grown from human alloy and elven root. It bore no titles, no ranks, only a single line: "We choose to see each other clearly." Ember lay coiled near the navigation console, his scales now threaded with faint silver veins, a mark, Lyra believed, of his kinship with the Elder. He no longer growled at strangers. Instead, he often let refugee children climb onto his back during station visits, his wings curling gently around them like a shield. Nora tapped a command, and the main screen shifted to show the Veil Nebula, once a place of fear, now a symbol of truth. The false beacon was gone, replaced by a memorial arch built by human and elven hands alike. It hummed softly with the same frequency as the old binding hymn, a constant reminder that lies could be undone and trust rebuilt. Claire Bennett's voice came over the comm. Freighter Stardust Maeve clear of Dock 7, heading to Xanthar Colony with medical supplies and 3 Duskwarden seedlings. Lyra smiled. The seedlings were her doing, saplings from the last Moonblossom Grove now being replanted across allied worlds. Where they grew, the air grew cleaner, the soil richer, and people spoke more kindly to one another. "You ever think we'd be gardeners?" Nora said, glancing at her. "I always knew we were," Lyra replied. "Just needed the right soil." The Dawn Warden turned toward home, not Earth, not Eldara, but a new place being built between them. Orbital Habitat 7, soon to be renamed Harmony Ring, floated in a stable orbit between human and elven space. It had no weapons, no war rooms, only schools, gardens, and open decks where anyone could stand and watch the stars without fear. As they approached, a small shuttle detached from the habitat and flew toward them. Inside was the young elven girl Lyra had met at the summit, now wearing a simple apprentice's tunic with a human cadet badge pinned to her chest. She waved eagerly from the viewport. Nora chuckled. "Looks like we've got our first joint cadet." She asked to learn both navigation and star song, Lyra said. "I told her she would need patience." "Patience is in short supply these days," Nora said. "Good thing she's got you." They welcomed the girl aboard. Her name was Marin, and she spoke with the careful curiosity of someone who had seen too much too young, yet still believed in kindness. She brought with her a small carving. 2 figures, one human, one elven, standing beneath a dragon's wing. My village made it, she said, handing it to Lyra. For you. And for Captain Ellis, Lyra held it gently. It was warm to the touch. Thank you, Marin. Ember sniffed the carving, then gave a soft chuff of approval. Marin beamed. Later, as the habitat's lights glowed against the dark, Nora and Lyra walked the outer promenade. Below them, children of many species played in zero-gravity gardens, chasing floating petals that glowed like fireflies. Music drifted from an open hall. Human strings blended with elven flutes, creating something entirely new. Do you think they'll remember? Nora asked. What almost happened? They will, Lyra said, but not as a warning, as a lesson. We were given a choice, and we chose each other. Nora looked out at the stars. For so long, humanity prepared for the worst. Built walls, stockpiled weapons, trained for invasion. We thought the galaxy would hate us for being different. And instead, they needed us to be different, Lyra finished. Exactly. A soft chime echoed through the corridor. It was the habitat's evening signal, the time when all systems dimmed and the great viewport opened to the night sky. People gathered without being told. It had become a ritual. Lyra, Nora, Ember, and Marin joined them. As the lights faded, the stars blazed brighter than ever. Someone began to hum the binding hymn. Others joined. Soon the whole habitat sang. Not in perfect harmony, but in honest effort. Human voices, elven voices, Krell chants, Zenthar rhythms, all weaving together like threads in a single cloth. On a distant news feed, a neutral broadcaster watched the live stream and whispered to her crew, "Look at them. They're not celebrating victory. They're practicing peace." And that, her co-host replied, is far more dangerous to tyranny than any weapon. Back on the Dawnwarden, as the night cycle ended, Lyra stood alone on the observation deck. Ember rested his head on her lap. She ran her fingers over the dragon scale still warm in her palm. It pulsed gently, as if listening to the song still echoing through the habitat. Nora found her there. "You should get some rest soon," Lyra said. "I was just thinking." The council wanted war because they feared change. But change is not the enemy. Silence is. Ignorance is. Fear is. And now, Nora said, we speak. We listen. We act. Yes, they stood in silence for a while, watching the habitat spin slowly against the stars. Inside, Marin laughed as she tried to teach a human boy how to fold light paper into a dragon. Outside, the galaxy turned, a little kinder than before. In the weeks that followed, more ships arrived at Harmony Ring, not with demands but with questions. How do we join? How do we help? How do we begin? And each time the answer was the same. Start by seeing the person in front of you, not their species, not their past, not their uniform. Just them. Humanity did not lead this new age. They simply opened the door, and when others stepped through, they smiled, not in triumph but in welcome. Years later, historians would call it the quiet turning. The moment the galaxy chose connection over control, but those who lived it knew better. It was not one moment. It was 1,000 small choices, like a human captain rerouting shields to save strangers, like an elf singing to a dragon lost in rage, like a child offering a carving to 2 women who dared to hope. And as the Dawnwarden sailed on, carrying seeds, songs, and stories to worlds still healing, the stars themselves seemed to smile back, not with fire, not with judgment, but with quiet, unshakable light.